Hey, what's up guys? How's it going out there? Welcome back to my channel for my review of Eden Zero, chapter 116, Sky Sweeper. Alright, so this chapter was literally the definition, literally the definition of a setup chapter. This chapter exists solely to set up the three fights that we're going to end up getting in this arc, and that is Shiki versus Orc, Rebecca versus Brittany, Rebecca versus Brittany, and Homura versus Mora. Now, I think that the other two fights, or two of those fights, are more fair than the third one, and you'll figure out which one I'm talking about later on in the video. Now, before I get into the actual chapter, I want to talk about the illustrated cover page that we get for this chapter, which is basically just Sister in a nice swimsuit, basically just lounging around in what looks like a pool. She has some drinks around her. It's a nice picture, really makes me miss summer at this point, and anytime I can take it to basically just gush over Hiro Mashima's art in this series, I'm going to do it. I know I talk about the art in pretty much every single review of Eden Zero, and even in my reviews of 100 Year Quest of Fairy Tail, but there's something about Hiro Mashima's art that just really makes me, excited and, ecstatic to read it and look at it. At this point, I think I can honestly say that Hiro Mashima might be my favorite manga artist in the entire industry. And that's not to say that I don't like other manga artists. Obviously I like Black Clover. Tabata Yuki's doing a great job over there. This channel pretty much exists solely to talk about Black Clover. I love what the creator of Attack on Titan, I can never remember his actual name, but I love what he's doing over there with that series, the dark and, the horrific art that he has in his art style. I love what Eiichiro Oda is doing over there at One Piece, a lot of other artists out there. I love their styles. But when it comes to Hiro, there's something about this new style that he developed over in Fairy Tail and then basically refined and kind of mastered over here in Eden Zero that always draws my attention and actually really has me coming back to it for more. Okay, so the chapter picks up literally where the last one left off. We have Brittany and Orc showing up, and we see this panel, this actually really interesting panel, and I won't say interesting because of the scene we get with Shiki later, but we see this interesting panel of Shiki on that same page where we get introduced to Orc and Brittany, and we see Shiki looking at them, and at first I thought he was looking at them kind of like trembling, like he was afraid of the fact that two more people are showing up when he's barely hanging on when it comes to fighting against Mora. But then I thought to myself, wait, that's not Shiki's character. He wouldn't be afraid of more opponents. He'd just be angrier. And that's when I realized, all right, that look he's giving them right now, he's not afraid of them. He's actually just shaking in anger and like rage. And I couldn't figure out exactly why he would be so angry at them, considering the fact that he literally just met them. And usually, even when they're opponents, even when they're bad guys, when Shiki meets new people, unless they did something to piss him off or to affect his friends, he instantly just wants to become friends with them. And then I realized that the reason why Shiki's probably so angry at them right now is because of the fact that Orc literally walked up to them holding the head or the detached head of a giant robot. Probably even the same one that Shiki fought in chapter 114. So obviously because of the fact that Shiki obviously has the idea that humans and robots can be friends, everyone can live in peace. And even when they were fighting off against the robots, Shiki was doing everything in his power not to actually kill any of them. The fact that Orc is just, so blatantly just walking up with a robot's head in his arm would obviously very easily piss him off. Oh yeah, and speaking of Orc, we actually get a better shot of his arm in this chapter. Now, when we saw it at the end of the last week's chapter, I thought that his arm looks more along the lines of Kid over in One Piece. Or if you know what Kid looks like, basically the metal arm that he has is just a bunch of scrap metal pulled together to basically resemble an arm. And I thought that was what's going on with Orc in this chapter. But then when we get a better shot of his arm, we can see that it actually looks more complete, more like an actual robotic arm than it does just basically a bunch of scrap metal pulled together. It kind of looks like that the inside of it is just a normal robot arm, and then the outside seems like it has a little bit of armor around it. So I thought that maybe we end up finding out that what Orc's ability is that he can basically assimilate machinery around him into armor for himself. And we see later on in the chapter that I'm actually somewhat right, that he actually can use his arm to basically assimilate other machinery into it. But I don't think this is actually an Aether Gear ability. I think this actually just might be an ability that he has by being half robot. Now, in my last review, I mentioned that I didn't think any of them really stood a good chance against Mora, and now that Brittany and Orc have showed up as well, that they're pretty much outmatched. Maybe they could take out Brittany and Orc, but when it came to Mora, I didn't think any of them were a really good matchup against his abilities. So I said that Pino using her EMP was probably the best option they had. Knock out everyone's Aether Gear, just basically everyone's just a normal person now, except for Orc who had a robot arm. But anyway, once you're able to get free from the trees, just, knock out everyone's Aether Gear ability with the EMP, and then just get the fuck out of there. But we end up finding out from this chapter, or at least Hiro kind of puts the idea in our head that, maybe that actually wouldn't work, because Rebecca has that same kind of thought in the chapter, and Pino says that because of the fact that the glue's not electrical or, mechanical, her EMP wouldn't affect it. Now, I'm not sure if this is Hero saying that her EMP wouldn't affect Mora because his ability is glue based, or if she's just saying that the EMP literally would not help in unsticking them from the tree. It's a little bit weird. I want to see what she ends up saying in the official translation when it comes out on Wednesday, in order to see if there's any kind of like discrepancies there, and maybe Hero's actually giving us a clear message saying that, oh, Rebecca for some reason was telling Pino to use her EMP to knock out the glue, and that Pino was just saying that she couldn't do that, or if Hero actually is saying that Pino's ability to use her EMP wouldn't affect Mora. Now, Shiki actually ends up freeing him from the tree, and it seems like he kind of forgot that he actually has gravity abilities at some point, or he didn't think that he actually could use his gravity abilities to free them from the trees. So they had to remind him of this in the chapter, and when he gets reminded of it, he has to kind of look at it, seems like, oh yeah, that's right, I can do this. And anyway, he ends up using an area effect gravity ability, which looks dope as hell, by the way. But he ends up using it to basically pull the glue off of them, unsticking them from the trees, and ending up ripping a lot of their clothes. And this scene where everyone's clothes gets ripped off in the chapter pretty much just confirms that Rebecca has Lucy syndrome, where she's going to be the one character who, in every situation they're in, is going to be the one who loses her clothes and ends up having to find a new outfit on the fly. Because we end up seeing that even though everyone else had, little tears in their shirts and their clothes, Rebecca's the only one whose shirt became completely unusable. But anyway, now that all of them are free, it's a more even fight, but I still don't think any of them are a good matchup against Mora, so because of that, Mora, Brittany, and Orc still have the advantage. Plus, on top of that, we don't know exactly, or at least at this point in the chapter, we don't know exactly what any of their abilities are. So, it's still kind of an unknown fight, and I still think that the best option for all of them would just be to retreat, go get back up from Jen, Klein, and Laguna, possibly, Witch and Sister as well, and then just kind of get out of there. But they plan on fighting until we end up getting this moment where actually they get interrupted by a bunch of drones who are flying over, and I think it's the same kind of drones that are attacking Eden Zero right now. But a bunch of drones are flying over. They detect a large spike in ether gear use and ether gear users in the forest, and instead of basically sending a bunch of robots to kind of just die trying to take them out, they decide to basically just bomb them. And it was actually during this moment when they're dropping bombs, so we actually get to see a look at exactly how Orc's arm ability works, where he basically just jumps up in the air, he grabs onto one of the drones, uses his arm to kind of assimilate the weapons that the drone has, then hops on top of it and just basically uses those weapons to destroy the other drones. And which is kind of interesting because of the fact that even though he's destroying robots, and even though Shiki was clearly very mad at him for just, blatantly having a robot arm or a robot head in his arm in the beginning of the chapter, while he's watching Orc use his ability to destroy other drones, he's kind of just sitting there admiring him and calling him cool for doing that. It's kind of contrasting with the beginning of the chapter, but I guess it's just Shiki kind of just being mesmerized by this cool ability that Orc has, which immediately, it is kind of cool. But anyway, after the bombs end up being dropped, the entire forest gets caught on fire, everyone gets separated because of the fire, and we get this first shot and we see that Wise is alone, and he actually ends up, actually no, he's not alone, I think it's actually with the beekeeper chick that's hanging out with him. But anyway, he manages to, while he's trying to call Shiki and the gang, he manages to get in contact with Hermit, and she actually calls him back to the ship because she needs his help to stop the virus that we actually talked about in the last review, which we end up finding out that Ziggy used to basically just cause all the robots to turn against the humans. I had predicted that maybe this would be something that we actually would see later on in the series, like, her fear of this being potentially used against the 3 shining stars would be something that we will see later on when Ziggy refines his virus. But apparently this is actually a more pressing threat that we're actually going to be dealing with just now. So she needs his help to basically stop that from happening. I'm sure at some point we're actually going to see at least one of the shining stars get affected by this virus, and Wise is going to have to be the one to take them out and actually cure them of it. But for now, he's being taken off the field. And then immediately after that, we get another example of Homeru's weakness to heat, which I think Hero was trying to set up to be basically the same kind of weakness that the Dragon Slayers had in Fairy Tail when it came to moving objects, where basically if they were in a vehicle, they became very weak and disoriented and couldn't really do anything. And I think that's what he's basically trying to say with Homeru, because we actually saw that in the last, not arc, but kind of mini arc when they were in that underwater place. Once they got affected by the fire, Homeru really couldn't do anything to help, which is bad for her because of the fact that not only is she going to be affected by the heat, but we're setting up at the end of the chapter that she's going to be the one fighting off against Mora, which, like I said in the beginning of the chapter, 2 of the fights that are being set up in the chapter are kind of fair, while one of them was completely and this is the one that's completely unfair because of the fact that 1, already Homura is basically already affected by the heat, so she's already weakened because of that. And 2, Mora Mora's ability, like I said before, it's not really fit for any of them to fight, especially Homura, because of the fact that she only has her swords, and because of the fact that Shiki's punch couldn't affect home or couldn't affect Mora in the last chapter. I don't see how her slashes will be able to affect him in their fight. But I'm sure we're gonna end up seeing Hiro use a creative way for Homura to actually win this fight. Now, the other two fights that end up getting set up in this chapter are Brittany versus Rebecca, which we end up finding out that Brittany's ability has something to do with smoke. Because we see parts of her body basically turning into smoke at the end of the chapter. So I'm guessing that each one of these characters have an ability that basically affects their body. Because we see Mora, he can turn his body into glue. Seemingly, we're setting up that Brittany can turn her body into smoke. And when it comes to Orc, obviously his robot arm is able to assimilate other machinery, so that's obviously affecting his body in a certain way. But oh yeah, speaking of Orc, we end up setting up the fact that Shiki's gonna be the one fighting him at the end of the chapter. And that's pretty much where the chapter leaves off. But yeah, guys, like I said, it's pretty much all that happens in the chapter. Now, one thing I do want to mention that I didn't mention in my last review, Orc keeps bringing up this person called Shura. We have no idea who this person is just yet. And when I tried looking them up, the only thing I could find was, I think, some kind of like Italian or some kind of like European female singer slash actress, I think. I wasn't exactly sure. I didn't really do much research on that character or that person. And the character over in Blue Exorcist that's kind of like the teacher to the main character. And actually, when I came across the character in Blue Exorcist, the fact that the character is also named Shura, it gave me the idea that because of the fact that we find out in the chapter from Orc that Shiki has an ability similar to Shura, where Shura seemingly has a gravity ether gear just like him and Ziggy. I'm guessing that what we're going to end up finding out later on when we get introduced to this character is that they're probably as powerful, if not probably even more powerful than Ziggy when it comes to using the ether gear. And that when Shiki actually ends up meeting them, this person is going to teach him new ways and new abilities when it comes to using his ether gear, which will give him the power up he needs to eventually defeat Ziggy when the two of them end up facing off. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all that happened in this week's chapter. Like I said, this was literally the definition of a setup chapter. That's it. There's pretty much nothing there driving the plot forward besides setting up these three major fights for the arc. We don't even get to see any of the characters besides Herman from Eden Zero, so nothing really is driving the plot forward just yet. But I'm excited to see what ends up happening next week. I'm excited to see what these fights end up doing, exactly what Orc's ability is, what Brittany's ability is, how Homer ends up winning her fight against Mora. I'm excited to see all of that. But that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.